September 1944, Western Pacific. The crew of a PV-1 Ventura watched in silence as their new rocket vanished into the night. No radio link, no radar signal, just static, then a faint echo through the headset, like metal groaning underwater. A second later, the horizon flared white. One freighter gone. The pilot turned to his gunner and whispered, "It heard them before we did." The glow faded quickly across the Black Sea, replaced by drifting smoke and the faint hiss of burning oil. Lieutenant Jack Larison kept both hands on the control yoke, knuckles white beneath his gloves. His heartbeat matched the soft vibration of the engines. Beside him, Ensign Robert Hall sat frozen, the reflection of fire still flickering in his eyes. The radio crackled, followed by the stunned voice of the radio man. "Target destroyed. No radar contact, no visual lock. It just found it." Larison looked down at the red safety cover on his console, the one marked ECH. He closed it carefully. "That's the point," he murmured. "It doesn't need radar." Outside, the Ventura banked through a stretch of storm-colored clouds. The ocean below absorbed its secret without a ripple. 2 days later, they landed at Ulithi Atoll, a speck of coral surrounded by turquoise water and 100 ships at anchor. Mechanics guided them in like it was any other patrol flight, pretending not to notice the hush that followed the plane wherever it taxied. But everyone had heard the rumours. Waiting by the hangar was Commander Miles Rutherford, the project's architect, a man with too many sleepless nights behind him and too many cigarettes ahead. His uniform was wrinkled, eyes sharp and restless. He didn't salute. He just smiled thinly. "Congratulations, Lieutenant," he said. "You just proved that physics has a sense of humour." Inside the hangar, the air smelled of kerosene and salt. Beneath canvas tarps lay rows of stub-nosed rockets, their copper noses dull under the lights. No serial numbers, no stamps, only a single yellow stencil on the crates, classified. Larison walked among them, drawn to the faint metallic hum that seemed to hang in the air. "How does something like this even work?" he asked. Rutherford rested a hand on one of the copper rings. "Every ship sings, Jack. Propeller harmonics, cavitation patterns, the low bass of its engines. These coils pick up that frequency. The rocket follows it like a bloodhound. When it hears the right song, it doesn't stop until the music ends." "And if it hears the wrong one?" The commander's grin faded. "Then we hope it's far away." He led Larison to a workbench. Inside an opened casing, wires and vacuum tubes glowed faintly, emitting a slow, rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat of machinery. "It's not guided," Rutherford said. "It's drawn. Think of it as a moth that hunts sound instead of light." Larison crossed his arms. "You talk about it like it's alive." Rutherford's expression softened. "Maybe it is. Everything that listens long enough starts learning something." That evening, the sun bled across the lagoon, staining the anchored fleet in shades of bronze. Larison sat on the pier, boots hanging above the water. He could still hear it, that hum from the rocket vibrating in memory, a note too low for silence to swallow. Hall joined him, tossing a stone into the shallows. "You look like hell," he said. "I can't stop hearing it," Larison admitted. "It's like it's still out there." Hall smirked. "You think it's listening back?" Larison didn't answer. Somewhere beyond the reef, the slow rhythm of ship engines echoed faintly through the night, steady, pulsing, alive. Rutherford's voice drifted from behind them as he approached along the pier. "You'll get used to it," he said quietly. "Once you hear the ocean's heartbeat, it never really stops." He stood beside them, watching the last of the daylight fade. "Washington's asking for results," he added. "We'll give them more soon." Tonight was just the beginning. The commander turned and left. His silhouette vanished into the glow of the floodlights. Larison stared after him, feeling that hum again in the soles of his boots. It was faint, but it was there, a vibration crawling up from the wood, through the water, through him. He whispered to himself, "What the hell have we built?" Morning came grey and heavy, the air so thick with moisture that even sound seemed to move slower. Inside Hangar 9, every machine hummed with a different pitch, drills, compressors, power generators, yet beneath them all was another note, so low it was felt more than heard. It came from the Echo rockets. Even powered down, they seemed to vibrate faintly, as if their copper noses were drinking in every sound on the island. Commander Miles Rutherford moved between the work tables like a conductor among his orchestra. He tapped gauges, scribbled notes, and muttered to himself. When a technician adjusted one rocket's coils, the hum shifted half a tone. Rutherford paused, eyes bright. "Perfect," he said softly. "It's like tuning a cello that wants to play itself." Lieutenant Jack Larison leaned in the hangar doorway, arms crossed, watching. He couldn't tell if the man was brilliant or mad, maybe both. "You ever stop to think about what happens when one of those things gets confused?" he called out. Rutherford turned, cigarette dangling from his lip. "Confused?" "Last I checked, sound doesn't wear a uniform," Larison said. "If it hears an American ship louder than a Japanese one, what stops it?" The commander smiled thinly. "Same thing that stops lightning from striking twice." "Nothing. But lightning wins wars too." He waved Larison over to a bench covered in diagrams. "You see this waveform? That's what a Japanese freighter sounds like at 5 knots. The rocket locks onto the low harmonic, the heartbeat of the propellers. It can't be fooled easily, only drowned out." Larison frowned. "That's reassuring." "You're a pilot," Rutherford said, flicking ash into a tin. "You trust your engines not to explode. Trust this the same way." By dawn the next day they were back in the air. The test target was a captured Japanese hulk anchored 10 miles out, its deck stripped bare. 2 Navy PT boats cruised nearby, broadcasting decoy propeller sounds to simulate confusion. "Echo 4 armed," Hall reported, voice steady despite the tension. "Launch one," Larison ordered. The rocket fell, tailfire flickering orange. It veered toward the decoys and detonated harmlessly in a burst of foam. Hall slammed his hand against the console. "Useless." "Launch 2, Rutherford said calmly from the observation seat. The second rocket dropped. For a moment it flew wide, then jerked sharply, correcting mid-flight. The freighter vanished in a thunderous bloom of water and flame. The radio man exhaled. "Direct hit." Rutherford grinned, the glow of the explosion reflected in his glasses. "She's learning." Back at the base, the message to Washington was short and clear. Passive acoustic homing verified under operational conditions. Recommend expansion of trials. It was the kind of phrasing that got attention. Within a week, an order arrived. Project Echo to be attached to Task Group 77.4 for evaluation in combat. That evening, as rain swept across the lagoon, Rutherford and Larison stood on the pier. The commander smoked silently, staring at the distant lights of ships rocking in the dark. "They're sending it to war," Larison said. "They'd be fools not to," Rutherford replied. "Do you know how many of our bombers die hunting ships in the dark? With this, you don't hunt. You listen." Larison shook his head. "It doesn't listen." "We do. It just obeys whatever it hears loudest." "That's what frightens them," Rutherford said, flicking the cigarette into the water. "It doesn't obey us. It obeys physics." A week later, the white sand steamed east toward Leyte Gulf, its decks stacked with aircraft and sealed crates labeled sonar components. The Echo rockets rested in the lower hold, hidden under tarps. Larison watched the grey horizon roll by from the carrier's rail while the sky turned from copper to black. The sea was calm, unnervingly calm. Rutherford joined him, coat collar flapping in the wind. "Washington wants proof," he said simply. "Tonight we give it to them." The privateer bomber took off at dusk, 4 engines roaring. In the red-lit cabin, the crew moved in silence. "Target convoy ahead," Hall reported. "Prop signatures consistent with Japanese transports." "Echo 5 armed," Larison said. "Launch 1." The rocket fell away, tail fire vanishing into mist. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the horizon erupted in flame. "Hit confirmed," Hall shouted. Rutherford didn't smile. "Let's finish the job." "Echo 6 armed," Hall said. "Target, destroyer escort, closing fast." Larison hesitated. "That's near our screening line." "Launch," Rutherford ordered. The second rocket dropped and vanished. The hum through the headsets deepened. A radar tone shrieked. "Friendly signature!" Hall yelled. Larison slammed the cut-off switch. Sparks leapt. "Override, dead!" A geyser of water erupted behind a US destroyer's stern. The privateer shook from the shockwave. The crew stared at the radar screen in horror. The missile had come within 50 yards of their own. "Jesus Christ!" Hall whispered. Rutherford just stared out the window at the fading glow. "She heard something she liked better," he said softly. Back aboard the White Sand, the debriefing was chaos. Commander Avery, the carrier's captain, slammed his fist on the chart table. "You brought a damned nightmare onto my ship." Rutherford met his glare. "A nightmare that works." "Until it kills one of us," Avery barked. "Every weapon does, Captain," Rutherford replied evenly. "This one just doesn't pretend otherwise." Avery looked to Larison. "You agree with him?" Larison hesitated. "No, sir." "I think he's right about one thing, though. It works too well." Avery stood, jaw tight. "That's what I'm afraid of." The next morning, an encrypted dispatch arrived. Project Echo suspended. All units sealed pending review. By dawn the next day, the order had come down from Fleet Command, Project Echo suspended. All prototypes sealed until further notice. The decision spread through the ship like a bad dream. Crewmen whispered about the ghost rocket that listened too well, about the near miss that could have sunk one of their own. Lieutenant Jack Larison found Commander Miles Rutherford alone in the hangar, sitting on a crate marked Sonar Buoy Components. A single lamp burned above him, throwing shadows across the copper-ringed noses of the rockets. "You knew this was coming," Larison said. Rutherford didn't look up. "They're afraid of what they can't control." "They're afraid because it almost hit Monson," Larison shot back. Rutherford finally met his eyes. Echo did exactly what it was built to do. It heard, it followed. We just didn't like what it chose. The pilot studied the nearest rocket. "So what now?" "One last test," Rutherford said. "Quiet, off the record." That night, the Ventura rose into storm clouds, lightning crawling across its wings. Below waited a derelict Japanese freighter used for calibration. "Echo armed," Hall called. "Release." The rocket dropped, tailfire vanishing into rain. The blast lit the ocean like noon. Then, through the headset, low, rhythmic humming. "Launcher's still hot," Hall warned. "We fired one." Back on the island, one rocket still on its rack vibrated faintly, copper rings glowing. "Cut power," a tech shouted. Sparks flew, the sound deepened, then died. Moments later, a lookout radioed. "Enemy patrol boat, 2 miles out, bearing 089. Rutherford stared into the rain. "It knew before we did." Larison's voice was barely a whisper. "It listens better than any of us." By morning, the prototypes were sealed inside steel crates, their hum finally silenced. Cranes lifted them toward a waiting transport ship, while rain turned the pier into silver glass. Rutherford stood beside Larison under the hangar awning, watching. Each crate swung like a coffin in the grey light. "You'd never know," Rutherford said quietly, "that every box here could find a ship in the dark." Larison's jaw tightened. "And now they'll vanish." "Nothing vanishes," the commander replied. "It just waits to be found again." He pulled a tuning fork from his pocket, struck it against the railing, and held it out over the water. A pure tone rang through the rain. Ripples spread from the pier into the lagoon. Larison frowned. What was that? Rutherford gave a small, tired smile. "Goodbye?" The ship's engines rumbled to life, their deep vibration running through the boards beneath their feet. The sound rolled out to sea, steady as a heartbeat. "Maybe it's better this way," Larison said. "Maybe some things shouldn't exist." Rutherford nodded. Weapons that listen scare men who only know how to shout. They watched as the transport slipped beyond the reef, swallowed by mist. The pier fell quiet except for the soft hiss of rain. Larison tapped his fingers on the railing. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. From far out over the water came a faint echo. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. He froze, listening. "Just the wind," he muttered, though he didn't believe it. Behind him the base came alive, the clang of hatches, the rumble of engines, war resuming its rhythm. But beneath it all, the ocean seemed to breathe in time, low and patient, as if something beneath the waves were still awake. Larison turned once more toward the horizon and whispered, "Sleep tight, you ghosts." The sea gave no answer, only the endless pulse of water against the coral, quiet, listening.